Marsh at Podcast Alley. This is Sports and More with Dean Millard.
I just couldn't believe how good he was. You know, he was so good. We had a really good season that year. We pretty much kind of had a dominant trail all the way through the season, all the way through playoffs, and then game one against Crosby, the first 10 minutes of the game, we went down 3-0, and he had 3 unbelievable plays. Then it was literally nobody's fault. Nothing really differently could have been done, and it was like all dropped, like all. What's the word? Like your mouth just dropped at what he did, you know? So it took us by shock, the fact that anybody could do this to us, because we had such a strong team. It wasn't, 2 or 3 guys carry us the whole year. We had a very strong team. D-Core was sick. We had 4 lines that were really good, and we had a top-notch goaltending. And Crosby went through us in 10 minutes like nothing. And we refocused, and we ended up winning that game in overtime. Marcus Ott scored the game winner, but that first 10 minutes gave us all a view of how unbelievable that kid was.
That is the voice of Rob Schremp, former Edmonton Oiler, a Memorial Cup champion of 2005, taking us back to that tournament when Sidney Crosby lost out, unfortunately, to the London Knights. Unfortunately for the London Knights. Hello there, everybody. Thanks very much for joining me here on Sports and More, the podcast, episode 39, which will feature Rob Schremp, former Oiler, former Islander, Thrasher, and had some success in Europe as well. And he's launching a new coaching program. So we're going to chat with him about that 05 Memorial Cup, which was unfortunately canceled yesterday by the Canadian Hockey League due to the COVID-19 pandemic we are in right now. But we'll go back to that 05 Memorial Cup. And we'll talk about what he's doing now, 44 Vision Hockey. He played with a couple of really interesting players, former Oiler Doug Weight on the island and Corey Perry in London. And we'll find out kind of the evolution of Corey Perry as skilled player to pest to co-winner of the Rocket Richard Trophy. And Rob is going to reflect a little bit on the 2006 Stanley Cup run that ended in Game 7 in Carolina, unfortunately, for the Edmonton Oilers. He wasn't part of the team on the ice, but he was a part of the team as one of the Black Aces, a spare, and his memories of not just being in the building and around the team, but in the city during that time are very cool. So excited to bring you the conversation with Rob Schremp in just a little bit, but let's talk a little bit about Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports. The fantasy sports are great. And when we get back to them, it's going to be even better. And with Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports, it's more realistic than ever. Own one of the only 31 professional fantasy hockey franchises in the world. You get 23-man rosters, a 27-player reserve list to stockpile for the future. Of course, you get daily roster moves, a really unique playoff format. This fantasy league doesn't end in the regular season. It continues on into the playoffs. And they're not just players on your roster, they're digital assets. You use digital currency to buy and sell players, build a championship team now, and win money or stockpile for the future. And they are working on something that could be very cool, even though there is no live sports going on right now. So there's only a few franchises left of the 31 available. You can get your own by bidding right now. If you're watching, you can see the link on the screen. If you're listening, get a pen. I'll give it to you. It's www.airauctioneer.com /UFF sports NHL fantasy franchise auction. It is so cool. Duckman's Dominators are a member of this league. We were in a position to make the playoffs. And unfortunately, the season has been put on hold. So you can get in on the best fantasy game out there. Open your free account at airauctioneer.com. Make your bid, and you will be notified if you are outbid. In this format, you own the game, so get in the game. Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports. All right, our top three brought to you by UFF Sports is, what is the hardest trophy or cup to win in all of sports? What are the top three toughest trophies, championships to win in all of sports? And you know what? I hope people come up with some creative ones. My honorable mention is the Triple Crown. Doesn't involve, an animal is doing most of it, and it's a singular sport for the most part, but the Triple Crown has only been done 13 times, and only twice since 78. 3 times if you include 78. It was a regular occurrence, and then it took a whole bunch of time off. So the Triple Crown for me is my honorable mention when it comes to the top 3 hardest trophies / cups to win.
Can you dig it? Can you dig it?
Number 3, I'm going with the FIFA World Cup. More than 200 countries try to get into it. 32, maybe, it sounds like more. And you could get in a group of death. You could be a strong country. So I'm going with the FIFA World Cup. Plus, it only happens every 4 years. So for me, FIFA World Cup is number 3. The Stanley Cup is number 2 for me. It combines everything. An 82-game season, length. Physicality, and hockey is the most physical, fast-paced sport, in my opinion. And 16 teams. A lot of teams. Like, baseball has a marathon season, but only a few teams get in. Football is a massive grind, but it's a shorter season as far as games played, playing once a week. So the Stanley Cup for me is the second hardest trophy to win. And number 1 for me is the Memorial Cup, which unfortunately was canceled yesterday, and for good reason. Listen, I'm not telling that I'm not complaining. I'm just sad for some of those 20-year-old players who now are done with their junior hockey career. So the Memorial Cup, because you have to go through 4 rounds in your own league, as long as you're a champion. The host can get knocked out at any time. But you go through 4 rounds, which could be best of 7s, or they're all best of 7s. So you could play a 4 7-game series, especially in the Western Hockey League. The travel is ridiculous. I remember one year I covered it, Brandon playing Portland. You can't hardly, I don't think you can get, you can get a little bit farther away with Seattle, but it's pretty far, Brandon to Portland to play. By the way, there's a little Wheat King representation back there. And then you go into a tournament where you're facing at least 2 other teams you haven't faced, maybe 3, depending on where the tournament is being held, whether it's in your league or not. If you're the Western Hockey League and the tournament is being held in the OHL, you're facing 3 teams you've never faced. If you're, that's the way it is. If you're host in your league is hosting, you're facing 2 teams that you've never faced. But now you have to play maybe a totally different style of face a totally different style of hockey, and then it's a round robin, and so you got to win your league, and then you got to win a tournament. So that's why the Memorial Cup to me is the hardest trophy / cup to win. You can get more details on Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports at www.uffsports.com, and you can get in the game, and in this instance, you own the game. Here's what's going on at Podcast Alley right now. Jordan Blundell and I did a little self-isolation Skype session. We had a self-isolation Skype session yesterday on the Prospects Baseball Show, chatting about Major League Baseball. Chris Sale injured today. Noah Syndergaard, I was counting on him in fantasy this year. He's going under the knife for Tommy John surgery, so he's going to be out all of this season and part of next season. So that sucks. So that information obviously didn't come out until today, but we chatted about what's also happening with the prospects in the Western Canadian Baseball League as well. Rob Schremp one-timers will come out in a couple of days. And on the Cannabis 101 podcast tomorrow, Tyler Smith, who is the man behind The Dope Show. It's a comedy show that heads to comedy clubs. It's coming to Edmonton in April, hopefully, with a cannabis theme. And we also did one hitters with Tyler. So that can be all found at podcastalley.ca. And if you want to get in touch with us, it's pretty simple. At Duck Millard on Twitter, at Sports and More Podcast on Instagram. You can find us on Facebook at Sports and More 35. And you can email us, sportsandmorepod@gmail.com. You could also find full episodes and much more at sportsandmore.ca. All right, Rob Schremp on the other side of the bio as we get to know him just a little bit more.
Time for the bio.
Rob Schremp grew up in Fulton, New York, playing elite hockey before moving to Canada and suiting up for the Mississauga Ice Dogs of the Ontario Hockey League. He was named Rookie of the Year, but 3 games into his second season, he was traded to the London Knights, where he put up extraordinary numbers with 304 points in 179 games, and he won a Memorial Cup. He was a first-round pick of the Oilers in 2004 and became one of the most popular Oiler prospects ever, for good and bad reasons. He played just 7 games in total for the Oilers before being claimed off waivers by the New York Islanders in 2009, and he finished his career with the Atlanta Thrashers. Schremp found offensive success playing in Europe before retiring in 2018. He's now launching 44 Vision Hockey, a one-on-one hockey coaching program. Rob, it's always great to catch up with you, and in particular, I'm always interested in what people are up to these days with COVID-19 controlling a lot of our lives. But first of all, how are you, and how are things with the family right now?
Yeah, we're doing well. We've been bunkered down for about the last 12 days, so it's been a good time to connect and stay really focused on family and my wife and daughter. And yeah, it's kind of been a little bit of a blessing in disguise, really, to have a pause on the world and have nothing really other to focus on than just being with each other. So it's been a good time.
Yeah, and we were talking just before we started about everything that's going on around us, and you're in Florida, where we saw the video of all those spring breakers, and just to the west of us in Vancouver, here in Alberta, west of us, we saw all the people on the beach. Does it not amaze you how many people aren't taking this seriously?
Yeah, it's amazing, and it's scary, to be honest with you. It's to see the outcome in Italy and see the outcome in other places in the world where the kind of same mindset of it's not that big of a deal was being practiced, and to see how big of a deal it is now, it's a bit of an eye opener. And to what's being asked is to kind of lessen the curve or take the curve down. It's, like I said, stay at home with family and absorb that time and have a chance to hit pause on everything, all the stressors and all the worries that most of us have, and just stay focused and hang out with your family. It's not that big of an ask. So it really does make you wonder why it's such a hard ask and why people can't just stop doing these things. The beach is going to be there after this, and it'll be there for a long time. So there'll be plenty of time to catch up on beach time or whatever these other things these people feel the urgency to do. They'll still be here once we can get this kind of all cleared up and have the world get back to being where it was or being normal again.
Well, yeah, and I think the seriousness of this whole situation is evident by the fact that every sports league has shut down. I mean, it takes a lot for leagues like the NHL and the NBA to say, we're going to risk not having a Stanley Cup or a Larry O'Brien trophy handed out this year because we want to get ahead of this, and then people aren't taking it seriously. But when that big of a league from North America to Europe to wherever are all shutting down. Like this is unprecedented. It's like every league is in a labor dispute right now, right? Almost with the COVID.
Yeah. I mean, that's I think what we've learned too. Obviously, it does not matter the title on the name or what your job title is or what your government job is. I think we've seen someone in government just got it. I think Rand Paul got it. It really doesn't matter who you are, and even if you're a professional athlete and an icon, it doesn't discriminate. So it really humanizes everybody. It makes us realize that this is a human thing that we all need to come together as a group of humans. It doesn't matter what your title is or what your status is. It's more important to people's lives and trying to conquer an issue together. And, that's what's most important. So when like you said, when leagues shut down like that, and it's the other thing, like they're asking people not to go to their jobs, right? So everything's getting paused and stopped because of how serious they want to take it and how fast they want to stop it, so that these medical staffs and hospitals can catch a break and not be overwhelmed. I think you see the people that are doing those jobs are the real heroes right now, and they're getting bombarded. So when you're that group of guys or the group of people that want to go to the beach and now it doesn't matter about coronavirus, like look at the people's photos that come off a 12-hour shift. They got their shield and respirator masks are embedded into their face because of how hard they're working and how long their shifts are. I think you have to have some empathy and some compassion for that, and bring that into your consideration of how serious it is to go to the beach today. I mean, the odds that you don't get, the odds that you get, the young people, that there are cases of it. So this whole thing of it's only old people is over. That myth is definitely over. And the fact that you might get it and be asymptomatic, but you could possibly, each person has the potential of giving it to 2.5 other people is the problem. And why it's important to pay attention to this. And that's not so much, I'm sure that most of us can get through it with the sore throat and the cough, but the people that have to go and have ventilators and have, ICU care is what the problem is. And that's where your potential giving it off is. Mm-hmm. That's really kind of what should be in your equation of what's important.
For sure. I'm sure you're still in touch with, a lot of guys that are still playing. I wonder what the thought process is for NHL players right now. I mean, we've all heard the scenarios of anywhere from a 24-team tournament to scrapping the season and doing the top 16 teams. There was a report from Darren Dreger about some of the players proposing that they finish the season, then have the playoffs, an off season in October, and then start the next season in November. As a former player, don't you think that would be a little bit too much hockey in starting in whenever they could start again, if they even could?
That's a good question. I think in theory it probably sounds nice, but then we'll see when they start. They have to do the travel part of it. They have to do the away games, and then in a playoff series, play every other day. And then when that's finished, there's a little short pause and get back to it. There'll be a lot of griping. I think that concept sounds really good on paper, and they think they could probably pull it off, but who knows? I mean, that is a ton of hockey at a high level, and with this pause right now, when majority, I think everybody should be sort of bound to at-home workouts. You're not, the opportunity to go to your normal gym and have those high intensity workouts like you usually would get in the summer. You're not available right now. So who knows about injury and what the players' bodies are going to be able to withstand depending on how long this lasts. So those are a lot of uncertainties. I don't know. It's tough to be thinking in that aspect too of trying to force, let's get back. I think what's most important right now is literally let's just focus on this really, pretty serious pandemic and making sure we're taking care of each other and our family and our home life. That's probably what's most important, other than hammering out a schedule, trying to force something in like these concepts. I don't know if it plays out. I don't know how you feel about it, but for me personally, I just think let's just get through one thing before you start mapping out that. Who knows how long this lasts? I mean,
that's the thing.
Could be June
or later. Who knows, right?
So you can't really. They're all they're all kind of what if scenarios. I guess you can. Yeah, it might be wise to have a couple what ifs, but who knows? It's tough to say because you don't know how long it'll last. And to the point of people not taking it as serious as they should, you don't know how long it will last. If everybody was in lockdown right now and everybody was kind of paying attention to the social distancing or whatever you want to call it, physical distancing, you'd probably have a little better idea of data and how long it would be until it kind of blows over. But for the time being, when you have every other day, you got a video of a whole street of bars open and people boozing together and mucking it up. it's tough to say. You can't predict anything that way because you don't know how many more people will be swarming the hospitals from this.
Well, and the most important thing.
I hear you. I know. Like, I don't know. A lot of hockey. The hockey part of it is.
Yeah.
I think that's a lot of hockey, to be honest with you. To be totally honest with you, and knowing how guys complain and how they get the road trips going and how much travel there is and how many games are going, and then they want to cram all that in and then have playoffs and then have a small pause and then go again. I just see there being a lot of griping, a lot of injury too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the thing. You have to make sure. First of all, you don't want to start the season back up and try to finish it and then have somebody else get sick because we weren't ahead of the curve or something, because that's disastrous. From a league's perspective, they're saying the most important thing is next year. If you have to scrap this year, and that's fine, but you can't have a situation where you try to start it up back again and then in July something happens again, and then your next season is contaminated, so to say. So I think that's what they're worried about more. And I'm with you. If you can't play it out, and listen, it sucks for Oiler fans because they were really in a groove, and we could have saw an Oilers Flames playoff. But there are bigger things. There are more important things at play here, like people's lives. So if there is some miracle and we can contain this and get a season in, that's fine. But I'm with you. The first priority is getting ahead of this and worrying about sports next year.
Well, I think too, like the reason for, we all hold that Stanley Cup in such high regard. It is amazing. It's an unbelievable hard trophy to win. Everyone's passionate for that through the whole course of the season. So for that to get canceled, it has to be something serious. I think this qualifies as something very serious. You know what I mean? Where everyone in the hockey community can wrap their head around having to cancel and not hand out that trophy in the season. How many times has this ever happened? It's not like something that'll be repeating itself and we're just going to randomly cancel seasons. This is something that's, very bizarre. And when you say, the 2019, 2020, there was no Stanley Cup champion. The reason for it being that way is it's a pretty legit reason. So if you had to scrap it, it doesn't take, you know what I'm saying? It doesn't take down the value of that Stanley Cup or those other trophies that you could win in other sports leagues. It's just humanity comes first. And in this case, I think everybody would understand.
Yeah, it's not like the season that was wiped out due to a labor dispute in the NHL or 1994. Listen, Canadians still hate Bud Selig for the cancellation of the 94 Major League Baseball season because the Expos were so good. But it's not like this right now. Everybody is agreeing that it's not safe. And, the Memorial Cup was just canceled, and that happens in May, but there's no way they can do that. And, you know how hard it is to win that trophy. You won it in 2005. So you have to feel for those 20-year-olds that maybe had a chance to win that tournament. In the grand scheme, as we've said, there's a bigger issue, but you still feel for those guys that won't get a shot at what you got to accomplish.
Yeah, that's really tough to swallow, really. I mean, you go from there to NCAA seniors, like anybody that's kind of their last kick and they had a lot of hope left in the season and a lot of things to shoot for, a lot of goals to try to accomplish. It does suck. But to the point of like, this is one thing that it's not a labor dispute. It's not anything of that sort. This is way bigger than anything we can imagine. That's the only thing you can put, the only pin you can put back in is that it just really was out of anybody's control. This wasn't anything really controllable. So it just really does, to your point, the OAs, the seniors in college, seniors in high school, it's gut wrenching, but there's no answer. It just sucks. Yeah. It sucks all around.
It does.
My wife and I were planning to move back to Latvia and be with her family for the summer. We're now kind of in no man's land. Our rent's up where we're renting. We're trying to land a spot, and it just upends a lot of people's scenarios. So sometimes sports takes a backseat to real life problems, and that's what's happening right now. The real life problems are the people in the hospitals, the people that are really getting sick, the people that are dying. So that those things are really what are more important than any sports thing right now.
Sports are good for distractions and, taking your mind off things. So let's go back to that '05 Memorial Cup. You guys were playing at home. You were a dominant team, and you open up the tournament against, the next great one, Sidney Crosby and Rimouski. What do you remember about facing off against Crosby for the first time in that tournament?
I just couldn't believe how good he was. He was so good. We had a really good season that year. We pretty much kind of had a dominant trail all the way through the season, all the way through playoffs, and then game one against Crosby, the first 10 minutes of the game, we went down 3-0, and he had 3 unbelievable plays. Then it was literally nobody's fault. Nothing really differently could have been done, and it was like all dropped, like all. What's the word? Like your mouth just dropped at what he did, So it took us by shock, the fact that anybody could do this to us, because we had such a strong team. It wasn't, 2 or 3 guys carrying us the whole year. We had a very strong team. D-Core was sick. We had 4 lines that were really good, and we had top-notch goaltending. And Crosby went through us in 10 minutes like nothing. And we refocused, and we ended up winning that game in overtime. Mark Methot scored the game winner, but that first 10 minutes gave us all a view of how unbelievable that kid was.
Yeah, Mark Methot scored 2 goals in that game, including the game winner. And, I'm thinking Mark Methot wasn't an offensive go-to guy on that team in London, but it's amazing what happens in overtime, right?
He was not. We had Brian Rodney and Danny Severette. Danny Severette was our leading scorer. Brian Rodney was right up there. And who else we had? Dan Girardi was a good offensive. So to your point, Mark was more of a stay home. And the one play that stood out to me the most about Crosby was he's flying down the right side. And Mark Methot was just an absolute beast in junior. 6'3", 220, could squat the whole rack, bench the whole rack. It was men against boys whenever someone went into his corner. And Crosby's coming down that right side. We call him Trotter. Trotter went in to absolutely smoke him. Crosby put his right shoulder down, or his left shoulder down, and dug his feet in, absorbed the hit, kept the puck on one hand, shoulder checks, looks out to the middle of the ice, throws a one-handed sauce, like 6 inches off the ice, perfectly on the tape of Marc-Antoine Pouliot for a one-timer goal. And we were all like, holy, you know what?
Yeah.
Like, whoa. Like, no one had ever taken Mark's hit like that. And then on top of it, the high-end skill play of one-handed sauce pass on his backhand to – it wasn't a hoper. It wasn't like, I'm going to get a hit. Let me just throw the puck anywhere. He looked, found it, and then executed it with the perfect sauce pass with one hand. It was just like, oh, we're in trouble because this guy can play.
So what did you guys learn about him to go into the final? Because Rimouski, you guys are already in the final. Rimouski beats Ottawa in the semifinal. They score 7. Crosby has a hat trick, and you guys beat him 4-0 in the final. How did that happen?
We shut him down. Brandon Prost, Dylan Hunter their mission was to not let him get the puck. In those days, we still had the old rules, and you could kind of maul and get away with a lot.
Right. Yeah.
And if it wasn't for those rules, we would have had another story there. It might not have been 4-0 because he didn't get an inch after the game one where he had 3 points and took us right to the max of overtime. Dale Hunter's a very smart coach and realized what needed to be done to neutralize them. And he executed. Those guys got their game plan, Dylan and Prusty, and they executed very good. I think Trevor Kell was the third guy in that line, and they literally didn't let him have an inch of space. And that was the only way to stop him because he was that good.
Yeah. And you guys hoisted the trophy on a home ice. It was such a dominant team. I mean, and we're going to talk about 44 Vision Hockey with some coaching that you have in a second. But I want to know before that, tell me some of the coaches that you really learned from that gave you, lessons on the ice, but also maybe some life lessons and things that maybe you're going to be using now with 44 Vision Hockey.
Yeah, it comes right to mind. Some great coaches through my career. Dale Hunter was in London. Now we're talking about those days. Really learn how to win in different ways to win, and how to be almost a student of the game, and find ways win. My biggest one that stands out for me would be Steve Ludwig was a big impact in even a short amount of time, one season playing for my rookie year, but really taught me a lot of different life lessons and integrity. And he was such a I really respect Ludwig. I love that guy, the way he carried himself, the way he was competitive, and also teaching me off ice. Really, I showed up there at 16, was clueless. I was there on talent. I got drafted first overall in talent. I had no idea what off ice was. Just literally thought offense was how you play hockey. So he taught me a lot about my own zone, about off ice, and being a full pro. And then going a little bit further, Don Kernan and his son Donnie Kernan Jr. were big in my career, teaching me. They're still, to this day, in my opinion, some of the most brilliant offensive coaches around. Seeing the game evolving and teaching tangibles of goal scoring and offense. And John Walsh, he was my coach growing up in Bantam, and he was part of my Tier 2 coaching staff, and just gave me a lot of confidence in my game, and was a really good just a support beam, and just making me feel comfortable, feel protected, and always feeling good about my game and feeling confident. So those are just a couple to name a few.
All right, so tell us a little bit about 44 Vision Hockey, and what this is and what it will be. I'd imagine once we get back to a little bit of a normal life.
Yeah, so right now it's what I'm doing. My concept is video coaching and going in and teaching players through their game film, and just giving them different outlooks and different scenarios. I think I talked about Marc Messier as a kid. I remember watching that snapshot, and I went out and emulated it as much as possible. And what I saw in my head was always that picture of that shot, stepping into it, transferring the weight from this foot to that foot and then snapping it, low blocker. I believe he's buried on that 5-hole, but my vision was always low blocker. So helping players envision these scenarios through their game film, where it's not so much, I remember as a player going in, it was always, system work or that kind of thing, or your kind of mistakes in the system would be on the video. With this video coaching, I'm building a team of coaches at all levels, guys that have ex-pro experience at fairly, high levels, NHL and Europe. And I'm also building a side for the women's as well. I have a few Olympic athletes that are on board for coaching. And what it is going in there and giving them scenarios that we saw through our experience and how we see the game, and ways to take advantage of more individual and not so much going in and doing video as a team, and where it's, left wing lock, or if it's the 1-2-2-4 check the coach is trying to present to you. And that video that's more for the team. When you start talking individuals, how can you be a better individual player? So my concept is also bringing on, defensive specialists and teaching angles in that aspect and how to prevent. And for me, it's on my side where I'm coaching, and with my students, it'll be about offensive production and what to look for, the mistakes to look for, concepts of the net. I always talk about the net has faces to it and how you manipulate the faces of the net, and using that video to explain that, break that down, where the data is to pay attention to. And, that's kind of the long and skinny of it.
It's interesting. So a prospective student can get some offensive skill with you and learn about their defensive game. Somebody else, can they, are they able to rely on all different instructors, or do you know kind of how the system is going to work practically?
Yeah, so you really will have these coaches onboarded through the platform, and you can kind of have your pick and choose of what you need in your game. And that's how it goes. And each coach will have their bio and have their description of what they can offer and what they've done, their experience. And then it's up to the player and, month by month, who they want to work with and what that might facilitate for them. Like I said, maybe it's 1 month you're working with me and we can work on power play, working on creating offense. And maybe the next month you're working with a guy like Freddie Meyer on defensive specialty, and we're working on shutting down and protecting against those offensive angles. So it's very unique in that sense, where I wanted to make sure I built out a good cast of coach with experience and more towards giving you that. Like, I just kind of relate it to almost as like, being in school, the teacher has a plan, a teaching plan, and they implement that for whatever X amount of students. Sometimes that doesn't relate to every single student in that class, This is more something where this is almost like tutoring in that class. So that student gets the tutoring, that player gets the coaching, and then he can go back into that system and still be a prominent piece of that system, but it has enhanced their ability.
I like it. So it's a one-on-one through video, and then you look at parts of their game and kind of explain it that way. Is that how it would work? One-on-one through video with video of their game?
Of their actual game. And I think there's a lot of value in private lessons, sure is, but sometimes it's a matter of what you're actually doing in the game and how that goes. So there's, in my experience in my career, there's sometimes you're doing these called skill development drills, and it's kind of like, where is this going to be implemented in my game? So what we are doing is seeing the game film, seeing the scenarios where we can help them enhance. And if it's not translating, we can also be building specific drills through video recording and show them the specific drills to work on to enhance these positions. That's where I find it. So it's now practicing with a purpose, not just practicing going out and doing the same drills that 15 other guys on the edge are doing. You're doing drills that are specific to where it's going to help you excel in your game. And then also a spin-off of it too is each coach will have sort of a subscription-based platform where they can be uploading their tips, their drills, their concepts, their ideas of hockey and how to enhance for a general view. So then people can see how a Freddie Meyer practice, how a Rob Shrimp drill translate, or how he does his preparation. So it's kind of a little bit of a two-lane highway for each coach.
It's interesting. I like the concept, and I think one-on-one video skills coaching, skill development, and when I say skill, it's not just offense. Playing defense is a skill as well, and there's different things you can learn. Who are some of the people that they have working with you that people will get to work one-on-one with?
So we have on the women's side, we have Rebecca Johnson. Amanda, we have, Blake Bolden, Allie Lacombe, Rebecca Johnson, are to name a few. And Freddie Meyer is coming on board. James Wisniewski, myself, Peter MacArthur, Amanda Pelkey, sorry, I didn't want to say her name wrong. Danny Severette is another one. And my old coach, Don Kerning, I'm having him come on board as well. So Don Kerning coached women's hockey for a long time as well, and you actually won 2 national championships for those girls. I grew up skating with them as well as the juniors. He was my junior A coach tier 2, but I would spend Tuesdays and Thursdays. They had I was 12 or 13, and they had the midget girls. I would go out with them on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and he had these girls. He knew how to coach and have system work done. So what I'm having Don do is teach coaches how to coach women's hockey and understand drills and different ways to get systems implemented. So I feel like, in my opinion, it really could benefit the women's game to start growing the game at these lower levels with the coaches and have them implementing drills and implementing ideas and concepts to help advance that game and help them grow. So I think Don has a big chance there to help and be a support beam for women's hockey. And then when you add the girls, like I mentioned, Rebecca, Allie, Nicole Hensley, these girls are girls that have experienced and been through it and are high level experience, Olympic experience. It helps them in those individual settings, in those individual scenarios, and help grow the game and advance the players individually, which helps the overall game. And on the men's side, no different. Just having some great experience. Glenn Metropole, another guy, great experience, NHL experience, European experience, sees the game in a lot of different lights. That's value, I think, where you can have people with that experience. It gives you a lot of different ways to hit home on the teaching side and to create whatever it is you're trying to create. Up from my side, it's on offense, create offensive ability and offensive production. And then on the defensive side, guys like Freddie, guys like Danny Severette, who was, I played with him. I thought he was brilliant on that side of the game. He was so smart with angles and seeing the game and shutting down, penalty kill. And also Danny is a very bright mind, hockey mind, and coaching, understands systems very well. So he might be another avenue for coaches to understand system breakdown, how that implements into players, and how to get your players going in systems that actually benefit what you have on your roster, where it's not just, okay, it's 2020, 2021 season, we're just going to do it. This is a new system I learned. This is what we're going to do. It's more about assessing what you have in your roster and then implementing a system for that to be beneficial for everybody, for the team, for the individual, and for success.
Sounds awesome, man. Where can people find more information about it? And when are you? I guess I imagine you're on hold a little bit right now, or are you able to work with some people right now because it is one-on-one video?
Nope, this is a time where we're launching now, so it gives a chance. The season just ended for players, so it's a time really to go back. And for the youth, the way that they have the tryouts these days, I don't know if they're going to have them, but the season just ended, and it's a time to reflect on what just happened and what you went through in the season. So, if you're a AA kid trying to get to AAA, let's go through your mistakes and game scenarios and figure out what we can do to get you better. Have you ready for that next chance to advance? Even if it's a pro guy, AHL guy, and it doesn't matter what level you're at. The season just happened, and let's go through it and break it down and see where we could have improved on things, give you some insight and give you some new things to think about and new avenues, new ways to think about it, I think. And once these rinks start opening back up, you have a chance to go out and, like I mentioned earlier, practice with a purpose and practice towards your individual craft and get that dialed in instead of just going out and flipping pucks and doing the normal, 2 or 3 skates in the summertime a week and, do the normal drills for 10 minutes and then scrimmage for 40. This is more something where you want to get dialed in. This is an opportunity to take a look at your individual game and advance it. And right now is a good time as everybody's probably getting pretty bored, getting a couple weeks into this lockdown or getting in this, social distancing sort of thing. It's a chance, really an opportunity to be productive while you're sitting still.
All right. So where can people find information so they can get into this?
44visionhockey.com. And we are going to be launching around April 1st, April 2nd. We'll be fully up and going, and all the details will be in there, and the coaches will they'll be uploaded, and we'll be adding, as we get more coaches that fit the mold, we'll be uploading as we go. But for the now and right in the front of April 1st or 2nd, we'll have about 10 or 11 coaches up there for players to have a look at and see if it fits what they're looking for. Men and women, boys and girls.
Good stuff. I'm looking forward to checking this out even more. Want to quickly ask you, I want to go back to that 05 Memorial Cup. Corey Perry was a teammate of yours. You had to have laughed at some things that Corey Perry must have done to get other guys on other teams off their game. I mean, Oiler fans, throw darts at his face because of what he's done to them in the past. I mean, what was being a teammate of Corey Perry's like?
It was amazing, to be honest with you. It was he was such a competitor, and he was so good in junior. He's so good in pro, but in junior specifically, it was a fun time because I first got there when I was 17. He was 18, and to be honest, he was just a good player, And then the next year, he came in and turned into this whole different player, absolutely dynamic, absolutely dominant, and he was also a little bit of an S-head. He had that ability to just. Guys would want to punch his head through the glass. And it was like, but then it pissed him off so bad. And then he'd go out and he would toe drag somebody and do an absolute highlight reel goal. So it was like, he would be that little rat, but then also the best player on the ice at the same time. They couldn't win against him almost kind of thing, So, and as guys on your, being on the bench, being on his team, being on the ice with him, it was just, you never knew what it was going to be. It was either going to be a scrum in front of the net because pairs would snow the goalie or knee him in the in the shoulder on accident, or give it the old standing there and the guy would barely touch him and he would throw himself on top of the net, turn into a melee, or it'd be a scenario where pairs would go get over the offensive blue line and just absolutely undress the guy, then go shell. So it was electric, and it was a big part of our success in that Memorial Cup year. I think he was, absolutely, without Corey Perry, I don't know if that season goes as well as it did. To be honest with you, he was the driver of the boat, and Danny wore the C, which was right. He was absolutely the captain of the team, but on most nights, Corey Perry, with his play, drove the boat and was the motivator for us. Once he would go out and do something, then as the next line behind him, you want to go out and do something. It was just contagious how he played and competed. But I see it now. There's so many fans that they hate his face.
Yeah.
They absolutely hate his face.
Oiler fans are right there. Funny. Oiler fans cannot stand Corey Barry, and that it proves that he's doing his job. But I digress. What about Doug Weight on the island? As an American-born player, was he a guy that you kind of looked up to? And I know in Edmonton he's revered for being such a skilled player, but was revered for being a good teammate from different people I talked to. What was Doug Weight like?
Dougie was a great guy. He was really good guy, really good. He's a kind of older guy at that time, mentor. I really respected Dougie a lot. He had some injury stuff he was battling there at the end, but he battled through it. And when he was on the ice, he was so skilled and he saw the game in such a different way. It was fun to watch. Like I said, he had some injury, so he's like some back injury, hip injury. Even through that, the stuff that he was doing on the ice was like, man, this guy's unbelievable. And that time it was a little bit different though. It was a different time in the island, and it was more like, kind of a change in the way game was played. It was trying to be like more fast and like chase the puck around, where just in my opinion, it's like, well, I would rather have Dougie have it, Why are we dumping it in ever when Dougie, as a guy like Dougie Weight that can control this puck and like set something up. So that was kind of like watching that was, for me, I almost got frustrated for him. I'd rather watch Dougie Weight do his magic than watch him forecheck a puck. But off the ice, he was such a good guy, and he was great. Like I said, he was a great calming kind of personality for that room, because we were all a little bit young and just get what's told to you. Where Dougie was like the middle guy, old, had great experience, great success, where he could be a little more of a voice and a leader and say how it's going to be. So I respected Dougie a lot for the way he handled it and how he was in the island for a young guy coming up and being the legend that he was. It was definitely an honor to be on his team and get a chance to play. I was on his line for a couple games even. It was awesome.
All right, and finally, we talked in one-timers, which people can find at sportsandmore.ca. We chatted about the 06 playoffs and being in Edmonton. I mean, that's a career highlight for me as a broadcaster. I got to meet Bob Cole in the catwalk at what then Rexall Place during the Stanley Cup final. I mean, that's a bucket list. You weren't playing in those playoffs, but you were part of the team. What do you remember about that run?
The electricity of the city was amazing. It was just unreal. I think started right with the San Jose series. It just started picking up, and they kept winning and doing well. And Rolson got on a roll. There were so many pieces of it. The way the city wrapped around the games, and then when you got in the barn and when it got ready for puck drop, we talked about it coming out in the rink. They did the countdown, and then the electricity, the building was shaking. It was nuts. And then every single play, the magnitude of it and the fans' reaction was so cool. And I mean, we won a Mem Cup in London, but that didn't even compare to what this energy was in that building with 19,000 people, and having it literally the building shaking from the energy that they were producing was something I'll never forget. There were so many highlights. The Sandy's playoff run was just, it was pretty cool. Like, third, fourth liner, and just absolutely tortured. Like every time he scored, it was just not expected, but absolutely appreciated. And everybody went ape shit. It was nuts. I mean, just all around. Roley making saves out left, right, and center. I mean, some of those games should have been way out of hand in the score sense, and Roley just stealing the show. Prongs really keeping everything kind of even keeled. There were so many. Pekka had some sick goals, some really big goals, also some kind of normal standard for him, some good playoff hits. You go down the list, and that's what it takes, right, to win a championship. All these little things that people they all kind of get looked over. But if you look back at them, it was like, man, there were some cool things that happened. Yeah, a lot of people stepped up. Fernando, especially, I think he had 12 or 15 goals that year. Like
13.
Who would have thought that going into the playoffs? Nothing against Fernando, great guy, unbelievable teammate.
Yeah,
but his role was literally third, fourth line shutdown, and next thing you know, the guy's potting like some sick goals too, like picking a guy off on the PK and then sniping from the top of the circle, top shelf, top glove. Like, holy crap, where'd that come from? Kind of thing, and like. Also, huge goal. Like the game was within one, I think, and that put it away, kind of.
Yeah.
Or whatever, it might have been tied, I think it was, and he put him up with a shorthander. those kind of little elements are what are the ingredients in the baking that are make it special. And then White Ave was wild. That was a Black 8. So yeah, we definitely enjoyed it a little bit more than the guys playing, but it was electric. It was really fun.
Yeah. Before we get to the play I want to talk about, what was it like being out in the city? Obviously, the players that were playing, and I don't think you guys were out till 7 a.m. every night, but just enjoying the atmosphere in the city as a member of the Oilers, that must have been just surreal.
Yeah, I think we got a little more. We were like absolute pigeons. We were Black Aces, right? But we got a little more respect than people, because you were an Oiler and you're right there. So it was cool. People had a lot of respect in the way the fans are with anybody that plays for the organization. They really treat you good and make you feel special. And we loved it. I mean, we had beers with some, different people. It wasn't just like a group of 5 or 6 of us hockey guys. It would be like 3 or 4 of us with like 10 or 15 random people from Edmonton and just enjoying and talking about the games and absorbing it all and having that good energy. So it was unique in that way. You get to meet some great people, some great, Edmontonians, not just hanging out with the hockey guys. So we get to meet some cool people and absorb it. Like I said, we weren't playing, so we weren't out to 7 a.m., but we didn't have to be home at 9 o'clock either. Mm-hmm. So we got to enjoy the atmosphere of winning and of almost getting that cup.
Yeah, that was, and that's what makes this year really tough for Oiler fans. Again, there's bigger things at play, but I do feel for the Oiler fans. Man, I did that post game show for over 4 years, and it was hell. Other than the 1 year they made the playoffs, so I feel for them. But the thing that stands out for me in that run, Rob, was Raffi Torres hit against San Jose that turned that series around, and that triple overtime game 3 where Ryan Smith loses his chicklets, comes back in the game and sets up Horkoff for the game winner. Like, that game is one of the greatest games I've ever seen live.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, I skipped over those. It's so true. Yeah, those just nitty gritty, like down and dirty plays in playoffs. Like you said, Raph just setting the tone and making it kind of like we're here. And then when someone gets their face demolished like that, comes out and sacrifices their body for the team, and then has a contribution such as that, it carries so much momentum. And those games were electric. The one thing I would say that I do remember from that too, as well, is how well Joe Thornton played.
Yeah.
I remember Joe Thornton was unbelievable in that series, and like really just absolutely killed that guy Thompson. He was making backdoor one-time passes. He was making all these setups, and nothing was getting paid off. And I remember one time he had a game, Joe Thornton should have had 5 assists. And he got, I think he had 1. And coming after, and TSN was saying how, Jumbo Joe doesn't perform again kind of thing. And I was kind of like, that is very unfair.
Yeah.
Because I was there in person and watched it. This guy came to play. And it just, the Oilers' will and determination stifled that. But it wasn't Joe's fault, which kind of bugged me a little bit. You know what I mean? I was like, how can they rip on this guy? The guy played, if you watch the game with your own set of eyes, he played unbelievable. It's just one of those things where that's what they say. You get into playoffs, you never know. And this was one of those scenarios, but Joe kind of got the knack there. Like, he didn't show up. He definitely showed up. I watched it.
Yeah, and you're right. Dwayne Rollison, had he stayed healthy and the Oilers won the cup, probably would have won the Conn Smythe. Him or Pronger, it would have been one of the two. And then just a terrible injury situation, and then the communication with Ty Conklin behind the net, and game 1 is over. But I will say, for Jussi Markkanen to come in and play as well as he did to finish off that series was also pretty impressive.
Absolutely. That's no easy task, especially your starter. Your starter comes in. Your starter has the playoff that he's having. Yeah. And then it was tough. It's tough to have to follow up. So it speaks volumes of his professionalism and his ability to rise to the occasion. Really not an easy task. And I thought both guys did a great job. The communication behind the net, it is what it is. Like, puck playing, it's loud building. You're playing, and when you get into a groove in the playoffs, like they were into a groove, that kind of stuff is like second nature. Goalie, defenseman handoff is you get so comfortable with the one guy to have it immediately be someone different. There's no time to be like, hey, timeout. Let's all get together and talk about how we're going to communicate these handoffs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You didn't have that ability. So it's not on anybody. It's just unfortunate. So it's kind of fortunate as they were to have that chemistry come together to make that long run. A couple plays really, unfortunately, the other way were what might up being a kind of a nail in the coffin. Who's to know to blame it on those things either? It's just things happen.
Yeah,
it was a wild run, man.
Yeah.
They went a long way. They snuck in that year too, right? Like it was like one of the last game playoff 8th seed, kind of a last week kind of playoff push sort of thing. So to get what they got out of it from the regular season, I guarantee we all would have liked to see the cup being brought out there for the Oilers, but they did a hell of a job. I'll say that. They brought it together at the right time of the year and almost pulled it off.
Yeah, it's amazing, what a few moves, obviously the big moves at the beginning of the season, but a few moves at the deadline, and that was definitely a career highlight watching that March. Rob, this has been a lot of fun once again. What's the website again for 44 Vision Hockey for my listeners and viewers?
That's it. 44, 24 is the number 4, visionhockey.com. And right now, we just got it coming soon. And in the next about week to 10 days, we'll have that up and going with all the information, all the coaches loaded. And from there, we'll be able to start having our footprint on the game of hockey and helping out the youth and it doesn't have to just be youth, other professionals, whoever wants to come on and get the experience and coaching from a great group of coaches.
Awesome. Great stuff, Rob. All the best to you and your family as we get through these strange times. I'm glad you're doing your part and staying at home with the family, and it was good to chat with you again.
Thanks for having me on. It's always good catching up, buddy. Appreciate you.
What do you say when your family goes away?
This is the Sports and More podcast with Dean Millard.
Got nothing to drink. How do you smile? You're no longer a child.
That's the wonderful sounds of Sweet Bejesus, I Got Time, from their debut album, Policeman's Creek. Kevin Dabbs, Christian Gutsis make up the duo Sweet Bejesus, the official band of Sports and More. We thank them very much for allowing us to use their music. Check out their debut album, Policeman's Creek, on Apple Music or wherever you find your tunes. And, of course, big thanks to Rob Schremp. I love the stories about the 2006 playoff run and what they were doing and what that felt like. And, to hear him talk about Sidney Crosby facing him for the first time is awesome. And Corey Perry. And by the way, I encourage you to check things out with Rob's coaching program. They've got a really cool, one thing we didn't get a chance to talk about was they got a really cool program for goaltenders as well. Actually, Rob sent me a text and we were just chatting about the goaltending program they have. They have Nicole Hensley for women's and Christian Frey, Josh Robinson, and Bobby Goldford. I think played at Minnesota as far as goaltending coaches. So really cool stuff that Rob's got going, and we'll try and keep in touch with him and maybe grab a few of his coaches that have some pretty good stories to tell as well. All right, before we wrap things up, we have to give you the ultimate franchise fantasy sports poll question. The Myron French question of the day, you might say. My old high school law teacher, Myron French, started every class with the question of the day. So I want to have that on every episode. Today's question is, what is the most impressive accomplishment of these 4 choices? You have Teemu Selanne's 76-goal rookie season, Grant Fuhr playing 79 games in a single season, That was wild. Paul Coffey scoring 48 goals. He scored in the 40s twice. I think he scored 34 times. It's crazy calling Paul Coffey a 30-goal scorer, but he did it so many times. He was a 30-goal scorer. 48 goals in one season, or Daryl Sittler's 10-point night. 10.6 goals, 4 assists. So right now, Teemu Selanne leading the way. By the way, you can vote on this at Duck Millard on Twitter. It'll be up for a week. We're at 169 nice votes for this question. Selanne leading the way, 76 goals in his rookie season. That's 43.8% of the vote. Grant Fuhr playing 79 games in one season has 21.9% of the vote. That's number 2. Daryl Sittler's 10-point game has 20.7% of the vote. And Paul Coffey's 48-goal season has 13.6. I hate being a front runner, but Teemu Selanne, like, we had no idea. That was pre-internet. We had no idea really who this guy was. Reading in the hockey news, that's how we knew it. Now, I was in high school, so I wasn't as invested in it. I was also thinking a lot about girls back then. But to watch Selanne do that in his rookie season, I'm from Manitoba, so I was a big Jets fan. But if I had to pick a number 2, Grant Fuhr playing 79 games. That's unbelievable. As crazy as Paul Coffey's 48-goal season was, playing 79 games, unbelievable. So you can have your say at Duck Millard on Twitter. The most impressive accomplishment: Selanne's 76-goal rookie season, Fuhr playing in 79 games in a single season, Paul Coffey scoring 48 in a season, or Daryl Sittler's 10-point night. And remember, you can get more information about Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports at www.uffsports.com, where you own the game. Thanks very much for joining me on this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please subscribe and leave us a review. It's really important. Helps us make this show better. So please subscribe. Tell your friends. You can find it wherever you find your podcasts, and let us know what you think of the show. If you would like to be involved in the program as a guest, if you think you would be make a good guest, or as an advertiser, please drop me an email at sportsandmorepod@gmail.com.
Can you dig it?
I would really dig it if you sent me an email. And that's going to wrap things up for us on the program today. I'd like to thank Rob Schremp for joining me. I'll have one-timers with Rob a little bit later in the week. You can check it all out at sportsandmore.ca. Playtime is over.